Coming up on Bloom, Tampa Bay is illuminated in green to honor Mental Health Awareness Month. We've got top experts in shedding light on what you need to know.
Mental health is health. And we give special attention to it in the month of May, but we really need to be thinking about this all year round. My recommendation is for us to pay attention to ourselves.
And there's a video series out to help you navigate the mental health system. Plus, how sleep is linked to your mental health. We'll have all that and more as Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging, starts now. I'm Gayle Guyardo. Welcome to Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and here to kick things off is mental health educator Natasha Pierre. Natasha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to dedicate our entire show today to opening up the conversation about mental health, which is the very first important step.
Absolutely. Mental health is health. If we take care of our bodies and our social lives, we've got to take care of our emotional and psychological well-being. We cannot leave it out.
One of the first things that you want to talk about that I think is so interesting is that the hidden drains just sucking the life out of us and leaving people in states of anxiety, depression, and with mental anguish.
Absolutely, and these are the things that we're not readily aware of. This isn't about mental illness. This is about all of the things that drain us mentally every single day that we may be overlooking.
So what are some examples of that?
First one is comparison. Sometimes when we're feeling awful, we may watch TV, get onto social media, and we're scrolling. We're scrolling and we're comparing our lives, the places of our lives that we may call ugly or broken, to someone else's highlight reel. And what that does, it doesn't make us feel better. It makes us feel worse. We begin to be dissatisfied with our own lives. We're hopeless. It reduces our self-esteem. We judge ourselves harshly, and we're really creating some standards that are unrealistic because we don't have all the facts of someone else's life.
You're right, because to your point, when I post on social media, it's typically the fun things happening in my life. I don't post maybe issues I'm having with families and relationships or, the stresses that I'm facing. Those many times are private and we keep them locked inside.
Yes.
So to your point, if you're only seeing those highlight reels, you're not getting the full picture.
You're not getting it, not at all. And we've got to be aware of it, but sometimes when we're feeling low and we just want a distraction, what we go to for a distraction really ends up doing a little bit more harm than good.
Another one that we've been trying to talk about a lot on the show is how to set up boundaries in our lives. And I keep saying again and again and pointing to myself, I'm terrible at setting up boundaries. Yeah. And it really does impact you in the long run if your boundaries are insufficient.
It does. We all need space. We need physical space, social space, mental space, emotional space. And what happens over time when we keep giving and giving, pouring from that cup, eventually the cup is empty. And if we're not being filled, then it leads to frustration, overwhelm, because we've been people pleasing so much. We get resentful, we're bitter, and we're burnt out. And we blinked and we're like, how did I get here? Well, we got here because you've been giving away all of your time, all of your energy to things outside of yourself, and you're not even on your to-do list.
Yeah, it's so true. And if you are, you probably put yourself last.
Yes.
Let's talk about social isolation and what a big problem that's become.
Yeah, it has. Some people, and myself included, are still kind of living in pandemic times. Maybe we've transitioned to working from home, and that's just where we've been. We're alone, we're not seeing anyone. Some of our social skills are in atrophy. And so we've got to be intentional of getting out, connecting, communicating, speaking to other humans, because we're just locked at home. And when you're at home and it's just you have no way of reality testing whether your life is really as bad as you think it is or it's not. And when you get out and you interact with others, that's when you realize that you're not the only one with stuff happening.
Yeah, and I think too, we talk about this social isolation and the loneliness epidemic that comes along with it.
Yes, and we kind of inadvertently have gotten to a place where we're lonely. I think, many people are looking up and realizing that they've let some friendships and some connections go by the wayside. They've relied on social media for the interaction, and we really need to get out. Humans are relational beings. We weren't intended to live in a silo, a vacuum, or alone. So we've got to be intentional about maintaining those connections and relationships.
And let's talk about how our physical health plays a profound role in our mental health.
Yeah.
That could be getting out and exercising. That could be the foods that we're eating, which are directly related to our brains.
Yes.
And could trigger some mental health issues.
Absolutely, and this is bigger than I want to avoid a cold, so I'm going to make sure I have my vitamins and minerals. It is ensuring that you're doing the things to maintain overall physical health, because one of the fastest things to affect our mental health is when we're not physically feeling well. So whether that's a sprained ankle or a diagnosis or any injury that is affecting the way we live our lives, that can create feelings of anxiety, of depression and sadness, of grief for the life that you had before. And so we want to be mindful of doing the things in our physical lives that won't almost trigger a mental health challenge.
And in closing, Natasha, and closing just for this particular interview, again, we're going to dedicate the entire show to your mental health. Any closing words of what people should be thinking about now? Because you don't want the month of May will come and go, but we've got to continue this all year round.
Absolutely. Mental health is health. And, we give special attention to it in the month of May, but we really need to be thinking about this all year round. My recommendation is for us to pay attention to ourselves, pay attention to our bodies, our minds, our emotions. Anything that feels off, follow up with it. See what's going on in that area. Don't just shrug it off as, oh, I'll deal with it later, because that's the foundation for a future issue that we don't want to deal with.
Natasha, it is always such a pleasure to catch up with you. We love it when you come on Bloom, and thank you for kicking off the show today.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to share Natasha's incredible advice on BloomTampaBay.com, and when we come back, meet a top Tampa dermatologist who is the latest member of our podcast, the Bloom Health Club. He's talking about the mental impact of dealing with skin conditions. Bloom, we'll be right back. You're watching Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging, saving lives through early detection. Call now 813-582-5222 to schedule your scan today. Living the Tampa Bay lifestyle means enjoying the sand, sun, and outdoors fun. So get out, get active, and nurture those healthy habits. Hey there, I'm Gayle, Guyardo, host of Bloom. Now there's a new all-inclusive place with everything you need to shape your lifestyle, boost your health, and improve your wellness. BloomTampaBay.com, Tampa Bay's premier health and wellness website, made to help you feel good. Whether you're a fitness fanatic, beauty buff, or just want to take your first step towards positive change, this free website is for you. See the Bay Area's hottest fitness products, the latest workout crazes, and learn nutrition tips from the experts. Plus, discover local events and experiences designed with your well-being in mind. Cultivate a healthy mind, body, and soul. Check out BloomTampaBay.com, your local health and wellness website. That's BloomTampaBay.com. Welcome back to Bloom. An award-winning dermatologist in Tampa Bay is leading clinical research to help people struggling with major skin issues. Joining me now is the CEO and founder of 4Care Medical Group, Dr. Seth Foreman. Dr. Foreman, it's so great to see you.
Thank you for having me back, Gayle.
So a lot of people might be thinking, well, what does a dermatologist have to do with mental health issues? But whether it's acne, severe acne, vitiligo, a lot of things that you treat and research, it really is tied into your mental health.
Absolutely. I think the first thing that we can talk about is the fact that if you have a severe skin condition, it can affect how you dress, how you do your hair, what clothing, how long of a sleeves you want to wear, if you want to wear long pants or shorts, because a skin condition can affect people anywhere.
So talk to me about some of the skin conditions that you specifically treat.
Well, let's start from the top. and that's the scalp. We see patients with autoimmune hair loss, alopecia areata, where people have an unpredictable and uncontrollable condition where they're losing their hair because of an inflammatory condition. Moving below that, on the face, of course, you have acne. You can also have vitiligo. These are all conditions that now we have medications that we can actually help patients and treat. Moving down to the body, you can have psoriasis, you can have eczema, you can have vitiligo, but also in a place that's very, very hidden oftentimes for many patients is a very painful and debilitating condition called hidradenitis suppurativa, which a lot of people haven't heard of.
I've never heard of it.
Well, I'm very happy for you, because if you haven't heard of it, it probably means you don't have it. It is extremely painful, it is debilitating, and it is a skin condition, which we believe it is autoimmune. And we are doing a number of clinical trials to help patients with hidradenitis suppurativa.
Okay. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how forward-thinking that you've been. I've followed your career for many, many years now. You've seen my children.
I've followed your career for many, many years too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, from cutting a wart off my kid's hand to whatever over the years, I've had a chance to watch you from both a parent's perspective, patient's perspective, and as a journalist. And the research that you're doing is really remarkable. Tell me about that.
Yes, we do a lot of cutting edge research. We're oftentimes published in the New England Journal of Medicine or the British Journal of Dermatology, the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology, and many others for these conditions of which you're talking about: vitiligo, eczema, psoriasis, the one we're discussing right now, hidradenitis suppurativa, which is where you get painful boils in very, very private areas, as well as alopecia areata, where people have autoimmune hair loss. These are conditions for which are very, very debilitating for patients, either emotionally, a lot of what we're talking about this month in particular. However, unfortunately for these people, it's not just limited to May. Mm-hmm. These people have they live with these conditions on a daily, minutely, hourly basis.
And so your hope, obviously, through the research is kind of a fast to failure when it comes to treatment protocols, or next generation. Like, what's the benefit for the patient that comes to you that not only gets the treatment, but they also are have people on site that are doing this research?
That's a great question, and the real reason is for patients that have had treatment failures with what's existing, meaning I can write a prescription for you for any number of conditions. However, there's a very limited amount of treatments for alopecia areata, the autoimmune hair loss. There's a very limited amount of prescriptions I can prescribe for vitiligo, which is autoimmune loss of pigment. There's very few prescriptions I can prescribe for that very painful, debilitating disease, hidradenitis. This is an opportunity for people who have failed other therapies, or if they're uninsured. This is free to patients. Clinical research trials are free to patients. They get paid a stipend, and they get all the treatment is free.
And what's really interesting to me, my mom didn't have a skin issue, but she was part of clinical research. It's amazing that it can really change your quality of life for the better.
Depending on the condition, if you have sought out a clinical trial, usually it is because you are desperate. And we are there for those desperate patients, for those people with conditions for which there is no treatment for. That's where we come in.
Well, I'm really impressed not only by your research and the treatment protocol, but that you do acknowledge the mental health tie-in, because it is very serious for a lot of people, and it's good to know that you're there and that you acknowledge that.
The one last thing I'll say, Gayle, is all of our patients are screened for mental health prior to going on a clinical trial. We do a Columbia suicide scale on patients for everyone to see if they qualify. If they score too high, then we know they're very, very depressed.
All right. Dr. Foreman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to share this story, and you can read digital reporter and producer Brody Waddell's full article on BloomTampaBay.com. And we're thrilled. Dr. Foreman joined us on our podcast, The Bloom Health Club, in the WFLA Now Streaming Center to continue this incredible conversation. You can stream the full episode anytime on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. You're watching Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging, saving lives through early detection. Call now 813-582-5222 to schedule your scan today. There fear is a condition that causes unwanted thoughts that keep coming back, or even urges or images that are intrusive and cause distress or anxiety. Joining me now is a specialist in helping people struggling with obsessive compulsive disorder, licensed mental health counselor, Natalie Noel. Natalie, welcome to Bloom.
Thank you so much for having me.
So a lot of people think of OCD because the term gets thrown around a lot as
Yes.
being a perfectionist or having to have all their pencils lined up perfectly, but that's just one part of it.
Yes, there are many different kinds of fears and many different domains of OCD. I think the one domain that everybody seems to know about is contamination OCD, because there's a lot of movies and TV shows that depict that, but there's so many more domains. There's, for example, harm OCD, and this is where somebody might fear that they will accidentally harm themselves or somebody else. There's perfection OCD, where people might reread their work. There's scrupulosity. There's two forms of scrupulosity. The first one is this fear of going to hell or being blasphemous towards God. The second one is more related to morality, like what if I'm a bad person or I do something wrong. There's one that's very distressing too is sexually intrusive thoughts, and this is where somebody has unwanted sexual thoughts, and there's many more. But with OCD, they're all followed by compulsions, and really any behavior could become a compulsion. But there's several that are pretty much key for everybody who has OCD. The first one is avoidance. I think everybody with OCD does avoidance compulsions, which is they want to avoid the triggers as much as they can, whatever those triggers might be. Another one they typically do is reassurance seeking, and this is where they might ask loved ones or colleagues or whoever they need to. They ask questions repeatedly. Is everything okay? Did I do this right? Or whatever the question might be in regards to their fear. Some people will information seek. This is where they go online and they'll research all kinds of information regarding their fear. There's checking compulsions, like some people who fear that they might have left heating appliances on, stoves, curling irons, anything like that. They might check. I've had people who have cameras up in their homes or even around their car to make sure they haven't done something wrong. So really any behavior as well can become a compulsion.
So what's the treatment protocol for? Because you said a lot of times people just try to avoid it, but that might not be the best way to
No.
address the problem.
Like any other fear we've all overcome, you have to face the fear to get over it. So exposure response prevention treatment is just that. We have clients do exposures that specifically target their fear, and they do the exposures repeatedly until the fear goes away. We call it habituation, but for other people they might think of it as kind of like desensitization. And so whatever their fear is, I come up with exposures that they do, and I do it more on a hierarchical basis, even though you don't have to do that. So we start out with easier exposures, and then over time they go up and they do more and more difficult exposures. But frequency is key. They need to do the exposures daily.
Now, if somebody is watching and they feel like they're struggling with OCD, I mean, is this something that develops over time? Is this something that we're born with? I mean, what happens that leads to obsessive compulsive disorder?
Sure. So we have found that OCD tends to start around the years of puberty, kind of right before, right after, and there does tend to be a genetic component. I mean, oftentimes with my clients, they typically have at least one parent or it runs in the family who has OCD. So you will start to see signs for most people when they're children.
Okay, so how do you treat this? Like at what age? As soon as somebody feels like this might be
Yes.
taking over their life?
Yes. As soon as a parent sees some kind of symptoms, and they'll see because some of their behaviors will become repetitive, that's the time to get an evaluation and start some exposure. It's really once the symptoms become distressing. When it starts hindering functioning in some way, it's time to get help.
Can you give me some specific examples of the treatments that you told us about?
So like specific exposures related to certain
yes.
fears? So with contamination, for example, if they fear touching something and getting sick, I will have them touch various items, maybe around my office or like door handles. There's bathroom exposures where they might touch different things. And maybe they'll touch their face. They'll cross-contaminate to their hair. At some point, I have them sort of lick their hands. If it's, let's see, harm intrusive thoughts, and somebody has a fear they might accidentally stab somebody, because those thoughts can be very vivid and specific. I might have them do exposures with knives or writing scripts or looking up content online that could scare them. If somebody fears, same thing with sexually intrusive thoughts, I would have them do, those exposures are going to be primarily online or script writing. I'm trying to think. With perfection OCD, I have them purposely do things that are imperfect. Maybe they send an email with a spelling error.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Don't let my producer Sarah hear about that one. All right, listen, I really appreciate you explaining this, because I think it's like, it's such a complex subject and people think they've got it figured out, but you might be dealing with this and not even know it. So what we're gonna do is share all the information you need on bloomtampabay.com. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. Welcome back. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and for people navigating the complexities of sexuality, particularly for individuals who identify as gay but feel pressured to conform to heterosexual norms, it can be an incredibly challenging and often painful experience, leading to profound internal conflict, emotional distress, and long-term consequences. Joining me now is a man who dealt with that internal struggle, the author of the soon-to-be-released book, Building Success, a toolbox for coming out on top, Tommy Whitehead. Tommy, welcome to Bloom. It's such a pleasure.
Gayle, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you. I've watched you for a long time, so it's so exciting to actually be here on set with you today.
Oh, thank you. That means the world to me. So tell me a little bit about your book and why you decided to write it.
So I've had a lot of struggles over my life, mental health, business-wise, same struggles that a lot of people have, and I decided I wanted to tell the story. I keep getting told over and over again, wow, you're so successful, we see everything you're doing online, and that's amazing. But I said, it is amazing what I've done, but you haven't seen all the failures and problems that I've had before this book. So I wanted to write the book and say, hey, here's some things that I've gone through that aren't as Instagram friendly. Mm-hmm. So too often we see people online that have this perfection, this perfect life that you see. They never have a perfect life, nor do I. Maybe you do, I'm not sure.
No, trust me, I do not.
But we don't have the perfect life, and I think the stories of all the failures we have are just as important as the stories of the success.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think, you know, you and your book and your success in life can be really inspirational to a lot of people, because you didn't start out life successful. This is something that you really strived hard for and worked towards.
Yeah, I grew up in a poor family in Polk County. They did their best, they tried, but you know, my very first chapter is entitled, My Backpack Told Me I Was Poor. And I went to a poor elementary school, and everybody there was poor. It was just kind of normal. And then when I graduated on to go to one of the first state charter schools back in the 90s, I got to see other kids' backpacks were different. You know, it's a long haul from a JanSport to a basic Walmart backpack, which I had. So these little struggles, they started to come up starting in middle school when you're already insecure about yourself and seeing that poverty nature and going to what I'm at today. It's been a while. I wanted people to know that, hey, I didn't start with a gold spoon in my mouth.
Right, yeah, and that is important to know. Why did you feel the need to create the Pride Construction Coalition, and who's represented? And again, I'm popcorning a little bit. I mean, this is kind of different from, you know, the topics that we're talking about now, but you've actually cast this net into your business worlds.
I have. So many industries are very accepting of everybody. There are some industries that are still struggling. The construction industry is a little bit of one of them. There's this machoism that you think about. You think about this old guy contractor coming in and bossing you around, and that's the feel that the construction industry projects. That's not it. The construction industry is just as diverse as every other industry. And as an LGBT professional, I wanted to let other LGBT professionals know, hey, we're out there. You're not hidden. You don't need to hide yourself. We're here, and we're just here to get to work.
And why is it important on a personal level for you to see this type of inclusion?
It is strange going to work and not being able to tell your stories for your weekend, to tell what you did with your husband, that you saw this cool new movie or you had a great restaurant. We want to feel open in our life at home and at work. And so it was important to be inclusive because we want to come in and we want to be ready to work, but we also want to be able to share our personal lives because our personal lives do bleed into our work lives.
So what do you hope the takeaway is for readers of Building Success?
I always say, if I could do it, you could do it. I think one of the big takeaways is to know your worth, to step back and get help when you need it, whether that's mental help, business help, professional, any kind of help. Step back and recognize that you need help. And you can do it too in small increments. Don't try to go to the finish line right away. It's a long journey, and you'll be doing this journey for the rest of your life.
And any thoughts on living your life authentically, the way you were born to live it?
I feel so much better. I love talking about my husband. He's an incredible support to me and to our family. It was nervous at first, and now it's just second nature. It's the same way you would talk about your husband.
I love it. Well, listen, congratulations on all your successes and the soon-to-be released book, and we really appreciate you coming on Bloom to talk about it.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we're going to share Tommy's story and more about his book on bloomtampabay.com. And when we come back, the conscious physician is talking about the importance of sleep and how it's directly related to your mental health when Bloom returns. You're watching Bloom, presented by Lifeguard Imaging. We begin where your checkup ends. Call now, 813-582-5222 to schedule your scan today. Sleep plays a crucial role in maintaining good mental health, and its impact on our psychological well-being is profound. Here, with what can happen to our minds when we don't get enough sleep, is the author of the Conscious Physician Method, Conscious Life Practices, and Psilocybin, Dr. Lita Fatemi. Dr. Fatemi, it's so great to see you.
It is an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Fatemi, sleep or quality of sleep, I mean, it seems like for me on a personal level, sometimes no matter how hard I try, I can't get a good solid 8-9 hours of sleep, and that's what we need.
Absolutely. You know, there's a few different things you can do. Is giving ourselves a good amount of sleep opportunity is what we call. So giving ourselves about an hour before bed where we're not touching technology. You know, also being regular about that hour that we're going to bed, like 9:30, 10 p.m. is the time that you're trying to settle down. Having yellow light in the room and not having blinking lights in the room. No technology should be in our bedrooms. There are a lot of bedrooms nowadays where there's a large TV in it, and that's just not the thing to do. Really intentionally setting up the bedroom for comfort, for rest is really important.
And what happens to our minds when we don't get sleep? Because I used to say this, oh, sleep's overrated, or I have plenty of time to sleep when I'm pushing up daisies. Like, you hear people joke about sleep, but it's their way of coping with the fact that they're just not getting enough.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's so funny you bring that up because in residency, we would go 30 hours without sleep. And now knowing what happens to the brain on this side of the equation, I'm like, oh, that's so dangerous. Not only for myself, but also for the patients, that you're making such life and death decisions. So if you don't get enough sleep, brain performance precipitously goes down, mental health issues precipitously go up, anxiety, depression, and then physical health, cardiovascular disease, risk of cardiac events like myocardial infarction or heart attacks, stroke goes up. Dementia, early onset dementia comes about. So sleep is absolutely foundational to our well-being.
I know you're out. We've had you on Bloom talking about your new book, but we want to, tell our viewers about it again. You're out with a new book, The Conscious Physician Method, and a lot of that is healing with trauma and what makes us so anxious, and quite frankly, what might be keeping you up at night.
100%. We see this in people who have anxiety that's not resolved. A lot of the anxiety or PTSD, it's all rooted in trauma that's not, people just don't know how to get through. And so examining ourselves, you know, one of the first things I start with my clients is sleep. How is your sleep? How many hours do you get? Is it interrupted? Do you wake up in the middle of the night worried? And recognizing that for a lot of people, when they go to bed, it's the first time they have time alone by themselves.
That's
And
shocking.
That's shocking. And then a lot comes up. So then we implement other conscious life practices such as meditation and breathing and body scanning and also sensory work that we do to connect people with their environment so that you're getting out of your head pretty much. So you're not cycling through these thoughts of worry. All of these methods engage us with our bodies, with our breathing, so that shuts off and then you can sleep better. Or bringing in gratitude. When you wake up in the middle of the night, don't get up, don't get out of bed. Stay there for at least 20 minutes, lay flat, do a body scan from your toes all the way up to your head, and relax every part that you're scanning. Just relax. And a lot of people, by the time they get to their pelvis, they're done. They're asleep. And this works for people who are insomniacs and have used multiple medications in order to fall asleep. Some of these methods are extremely effective. The other method is breathing through the nose only. So if you are a mouth breather, you wake up and your mouth is dry, or your partner is telling you you're snoring, using a mouth tape in the more recent years, research shows to be extremely effective. It shuts down the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, and then it engages the vagus nerve, which is the parasympathetic side, which is the rest and digest side. So if you're having difficulty falling asleep or being asleep, having good quality sleep, use a tiny little mouth tape. You can use the $3 3M medical tape you can find on, at Walgreens, Amazon, whatever. And it's just like, 1 inch right above the lip, right below the lip, shut the mouth, and your life will change.
That is a great tip. I may be taping my mouth shut. My husband's going to be super glad about the news. Thank you so much, Dr. Fatemi. We're going to share Dr. Fatemi's advice, and you can read digital reporter and producer Brody Waddell's full article on BloomTampaBay.com. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. Welcome back to Bloom. 1 in 5 adults live with a mental health condition, according to the National Institutes of Mental Health, and these conditions impact women more than their male counterparts. Here to share ways to find life balance is leadership consultant and the CEO of the Ullman Group, Dr. Monica Maybank. Dr. Monica, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today, Gayle.
So I have to say, and we do a lot of research here at WFLA, and we have found that people are hungry for more information when it comes to their mental health. They want to know more about a subject that, quite frankly, was neglected for so many years, leaving people to suffer in silence.
Yeah, we need to talk about it more, and it should no longer be a stigma, right? I come from a community of people that historically have considered it a stigma. And they say, oh, that's, crazy Uncle Pookie or what have you. But the reality is a lot of people are dealing with these issues every day. So as you said, 20% of all Americans are struggling with a mental health condition. And women have it the worst. Women are taking on more and more responsibilities, and their mental health is not being addressed. But our kids, interestingly enough, our adolescents are struggling with these mental health challenges the most, where 50% of all adolescents have some kind of mental health disorder. And these are things like ADHD, dealing with issues of depression, but it also includes things like thoughts of suicide and bipolar disorder and things of the like. So this is a serious issue that we should be talking about and raising a red flag on.
I think as a mother of 4 children, I think the hardest thing many times for a parent to do is to figure out, what is teenager behavior? When are they struggling? Because our kids are so active, they're up in their room studying, and you try to keep the lines of communication open. But when I read the statistic of how many teenagers are suffering, it's staggering.
It is, and I have 4 girls too, so I can totally relate. And I think one of the big challenges, especially with our children, is we're glued to our devices. And I know this isn't news to anybody, but according to research, we spend 6.5 hours of every day on our devices. And so that's going to affect our mental health in some way in real time. That's 40% of our waking hours is on a device, like the device in your lap, right? It could be an iPhone or a phone of any kind. It could be TV. This doesn't include time at your desk. This is a device. And so we have to pull away from our devices. But on top of that, there are a lot of societal issues that we just can't control, that we're worried about, our kids are worried about, whether it's inflation, which is obviously going to the grocery store now. It's like what used to be $100 is $250. And then you got issues of just, there's actually a lot of tensions and polarization. And our children are being exposed to these issues because they are constantly on social media. And they're seeing things that are bubbling up in our society that impact them, and they want a voice in those matters.
Yeah, it's interesting because we started a while ago, and it was recommended by experts like yourself, to even if you're putting down the phone, just to sit around the table for dinner and listen to what your kids have to say.
Right.
And it is interesting what they're exposed to on social media and the kinds of images and the kinds of world problems that genuinely haunt them, and that will give you the opportunity to open up discussions and make them not feel like they're in this crazy world that we live in and that they're all alone.
Yeah, our kids, unfortunately, COVID actually played a role in this. According to the World Health Institute, 25% of mental health issues increased during COVID. And so that's not a small percentage. And instead of us as parents spending time on the phone, we need to put our phones away too and have dinner with our kids.
Yeah.
Right? No phones is a rule that we had at our house when our kids, they're grown now, but when they were younger, you can't bring the phone to the dinner table. Everything needs to be put away so we can just talk and have regular conversation. And I think that's partly what we're missing in today's society.
It's true, and I think our parents, if you're out there listening, and I have another one about to leave the nest and go off to college, and I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. She said, you have no idea how much I'm gonna miss these dinners. Like,
Wow.
It's really impactful. We think it's just time around the dinner table, but it's really it's special for the parent, and it's special for the child. So it's so important. And you say you also need to set boundaries in life.
Yeah, so boundaries are so key. I think we make it harder than it needs to be. Right? There's more research that shows that Americans just aren't reading anymore. We're reading our screens, but we're not reading regular books like novels. People don't go to the library as much as they used to. And so the boundaries that we need to set is one, put down our phones, right? So instead of spending 2.5 hours on social media like the average user does, cut that in half and go read a book. And then in order to control and really regulate our mental health, we need to be practicing mindfulness. And that too helps with setting boundaries. So journal. You know, I spend a lot of time in prayer. People can spend time in prayer. They can spend time in meditation. And then they can spend time by themselves.
Yeah.
It's okay to spend time by yourself. One of the things that I do is take a 3-day retreat. It's just me and Jesus. And I'm getting time with the Lord, and I'm spending time away from all the noise because it allows me to recenter.
I think that's so important. I mean, I literally woke up this morning, and I had kind of had a bad night last night, and I just looked at that Bible app, and I sat in silence for a while, and it sets your day, and it makes you reprioritize what's important in this life.
It's huge.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you on Bloom. I hope you come back many more times.
Thank you, Gayle.
Absolutely. We're going to share Monica's story on BloomTampaBay.com. And before we go to break, it's time for today's Bloom trivia question. What is the most common mental health disorder in the United States? Anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, or borderline personality disorder? We'll have the answer later on Bloom. Welcome back to Bloom. Experts will tell you the best way to help people struggling with mental health issues is to keep the conversation going. And there is a group looking for storytellers or people interested in sharing their experience. Joining me now with more is the president and CEO of Tampa Bay Thrives, Carrie Zeiss. Carrie, welcome to Bloom.
Thank you for having me.
So, I know you just did a big research project, and what's interesting is that here at WFLA, it's important for our management team to find out what people want to know and hear about so we can do more of that storytelling. And mental health was one of the #1 topics. This is what people are concerned about right now.
Right, that is absolutely true. And that's been our experience with the If You Know, You Know campaign, which we started last year with stories of individuals who had overcome their mental health issue. And as we spent the year digging even deeper into some of our programs and why people were either choosing to get help or not going further in their mental health journey, we realized that process itself was just confusing and scary. So that by telling additional stories, which we've just launched this last month around, therapeutic processes. So like, what is it like to find a therapist? To normalize that experience was really, really important. And that came just from talking to people.
That's so interesting because, when, my mom was dealing with cancer or my dad with heart issue, you know exactly how to navigate the system.
Right.
But to your point, if you're trying to help a family member or that family member's just trying to help themselves, the system is very confusing to navigate.
Right, absolutely. And it's also, if you yourself are struggling, but you talk to someone on the phone and you get a referral, you feel slightly better. You think, maybe I don't have to do all that right now. I'm just going to step back. And then you feel worse again and end up in a cycle where it becomes a crisis.
And you even help people figure out something as simple as choosing the right therapist.
Right.
Or maybe parting ways if that first choice wasn't the right one. Because you don't want to stay in something if it's not really feeding you and helping you.
Exactly. And that's a normal part of the process. A therapeutic relationship is like any other relationship. And so you want that fit to be good and to let people know that it is normal to talk to someone for the first time and find out, okay, actually, I don't think this is the right person to help me get all the way to healing like I want to be.
And you've actually set up a Let's Talk line so people can help you. You're helping them navigate.
Right, exactly. It's 844-UOK, YOUOKAY. And it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And it's really someone on the other end of the line who can give you referrals, help you figure out what you might need for help, because you might not be in crisis. You may not need to call a crisis line, but you want to figure out, well, do I need a psychiatrist? Do I need a therapist? Do I need a counselor? Do I want to do peer groups? And it's someone who can just help you do that confidentially and free.
And I think it's really cool, too, that you're lighting up the landscape here in Tampa Bay green as a reminder that while May might be Mental Health Awareness Month, we need to keep this topic illuminated year-round.
Exactly. There is no health without mental health, and we have to pay attention to it every day in some way. It's how you perform in life.
Well, I think it's really cool that you guys are here in the community making mental health care more accessible, and that's really your mission statement.
That's it. We envision a community that is mentally and emotionally healthy so that we can all thrive.
Well, I know there's a lot of folks out there watching and listening that are relieved to know that there's kind of a blue book, or print, I should say. So thank you for helping us all navigate the system.
Absolutely.
All
my
right.
pleasure.
We're going to share more about Carrie and Tampa Bay Thrives on BloomTampaBay.com. We will be back with more Bloom right after this. It's time for today's Bloom Trivia question. What is the most common mental health disorder in the United States? Anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, or borderline personality disorder? The answer is anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental health disorder in the United States, affecting approximately 40 million adults each year. Thank you so much for tuning into Bloom today. You can catch Bloom anytime by following us on social media. We're on all major platforms, so get a behind-the-scenes look at all of the innovative breakthrough health and wellness conversations and incredible guests that we have right here on Bloom. And don't forget to check out our podcast, The Bloom Health Club. You can catch it live on Facebook and YouTube on Mondays at 2 p.m. Watch our podcast anytime on YouTube or listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Well, we hope you'll tune in again on the next Bloom presented by Lifeguard Imaging. Find out about the incredible growth of a world-class rated hospital right here in Tampa Bay. And the Today Show's Joy Bauer is educating us on how to read labels and ingredients. So stay healthy, everyone, and I will see you on the next Bloom. Call now 813-582-5222 to schedule your scan today.